Good morning, church. Would you stand? Let's worship Jesus together today. Come on, if you can, put your hands together. Oh. Come on, sing. When I'm in the roughest waters, go on and drown. When I'm in over my head, I know that you won't let me down. When I'm broken and down to nothing, come on, church, we say that I know that you are always up to something good. I know that you are always up to something good. Yeah, you make a way, whatever it takes. There's nothing your love won't endure. I know that you are always up to something good. Come on, put those hands together. Even through, yeah, even through the deepest valley, you go before me, you are here. For I know you'll never leave me. Your love surrounds me. When I'm broken and down to nothing, come on, we say that I know that you are always up to something good. I know that you are always up to something good. You'll make a way. Say you'll make a way, whatever it takes. There's nothing your heart won't endure. I know that you are always up to something good. Yes, you are, Lord. Oh. And through the darkest night, you are on my side. You are always faithful. Through my fear and doubt, you will lead me out. You are always able. Through the darkest night, you are on my side. You are always faithful. Through my fear and doubt, you will lead me out. You are always able. Tell them I know, and I know that you are always up to something good. And I know that you are always up to something good. You'll make a way, sing, you'll make a way, whatever it takes. There's nothing your heart won't endure. I know that you are always up to something good. You'll make a way, Lord, you'll make a way, whatever it takes. There's nothing your heart won't endure. I know that you are always up to something good. Yes, you are. Oh. Yes, you are. Come on, would you give him praise this morning?
Let's continue to worship together, church.
From beginning to the end, all my life is in your hands. This whole world may hold me down, but it can never drown you out. I'm not merely flesh and bone. I was made for something more. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you. You are strong in my brokenness, sovereign over every step. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you. Through the dark, I hear your voice. Rising up, I will rejoice. For I was lost, but now I'm found. 'Cause even death can't hold you down. You are God, you're the great I am. Breath of life, I breathe you in. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you. You are strong in my brokenness, sovereign over every step. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you. It's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives within me. Christ who lives within me. From beginning to the end, oh, you deserve the glory. You deserve the glory. You are God, you're the great I am. Breath of life, I breathe you in. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you. You are strong in my brokenness, sovereign over every step. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you.
Well, good morning, Verve City. You can go ahead and have a seat. My name is Audrey Eisenberg. I'm one of the pastors here, and it is a pleasure to welcome you to service with us this morning. If you happen to be new around here, we are especially grateful that you took some time to be with us this weekend. And I just want to invite you, if you're new around here, we would love the opportunity to connect with you after service, and we have a gift for you just to say thanks for being here today. So if you're new, go ahead and grab your cell phone. I would love to invite you to take a quick picture of this QR code up here on the screen. It will take you to a very quick to fill out online contact form. Fill that out, you'll get a confirmation on your phone, and you can bring that after service to our welcome spot. It's going to be the neon sign right there in the lobby. We've got some awesome, fresh Verve City Red t-shirts to share with you. And if you are somebody who invited a friend and they joined you here today, it's your job to make sure that they hit that welcome spot to get a gift. We've got a gift for you too. If you were the inviter, we want to thank you as well. So make sure to just take a moment, grab that contact form, and bring it with you after service to our welcome spot so we can say hey and thank you for being here. Coming up at Verve City Church, we are so excited because in about a month, we are going to be celebrating Easter. And we are so excited to be hosting a number of services, and we wanted you to be among the first to know about a month out what those service times will be so that you can start planning your own plans and thinking about who you can invite to Easter. This Easter, our invitation is that people would come and have a conversation about why it is that we choose to follow Jesus, why celebrating him at Easter is so significant in our lives to those of us who've chosen to follow him. And so I hope that this Easter gives you an opportunity not only to celebrate Jesus yourself, but to share that with somebody else as well. So our Easter service times are going to be on Saturday, April 19th at 5 p.m. and on Sunday morning at 8 and 10 and 12. So you're going to have to adjust your Sunday morning timing just a little bit, okay? Pick the 8, the 10, the 12, or Saturday evening at 5 p.m. We're so excited to be able to host worship and kids ministry at all of our services. It's going to be a great experience. In addition to our worship, we are hosting a special experience just for families. Family experience is going to be on Saturday afternoon starting at about 3 o'clock. We will be outside enjoying great weather, right? Enjoying great Easter weather. But we're going to celebrate with a petting zoo and crafts and, yes, egg hunts. Easter egg hunts are back for Easter, okay? So if you know people who've got kids and family in that elementary school or younger age range, we want to encourage you to come and invite them to join you for our family experience on Saturday. It's intentional that experience will start at about 3 o'clock, go to about 4:30, and we hope that a number of those families might stay with us for the 5 p.m. service on Saturday, okay? So that's kind of how we structured that. We just would love your help being able to spread the word. All of the info is on our website, and we will have invitations for you next week. But please join us in prayerfully looking forward to Easter ahead. At this time, we are going to celebrate in our service through generosity. By this opportunity we have, if you came prepared to give, we're going to give you an opportunity as we pass baskets here in just a moment to do that. So I'll invite our ushers forward. And as they come forward, I just want to remind you of two things related to your generosity. The first is that your generosity makes a difference. You are helping people find life by following Jesus when you choose to give through Verve City Church to fund ministries and programs and outreach that serves individuals and families in our community. And so we say thank you for your generosity making a difference. And the second thing is that when we give, we often talk about giving as a part of our worship, and it is. So as we sing this next song, it's called Firm Foundation. It's a song that proclaims that Christ is our firm foundation, no matter what we face. I just want to encourage you to think this morning as we consider an opportunity to be generous. That opportunity is more than just an opportunity of obedience. It's an opportunity to truly trust God with your finances. To trust God that He is providing for you and blessing you so that you can be a greater blessing to others. When we sing this song, Firm Foundation, it can mean a lot of different things. Christ is our firm foundation in so many ways. But when it comes to our generosity, we always like to remind ourselves and each other that generosity is not something that God demands from us or wants from us. But living a generous life is something He wants for us. Christ is our firm foundation. We can celebrate that this morning. If you're able to give, we're grateful for that. If you're not or didn't come prepared, please just pass those baskets along and join us in worshiping Jesus as we sing together. You can stay seated for a moment as we start, and then as you feel able, please join right in the singing and feel free to stand and worship with us as we continue. Thank you so much.
Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaking. I've never been more glad I put my faith in Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So I really feel now He won't. I've still got joy in chaos. I've got peace that makes no sense. So I won't be going under. I'm not held by my own strength, 'cause I've built my life on Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful in every season. So why would He won't fail. He won't. No, no, he won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. Sing Christ is, sing. Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaken. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus. He's never let me down. He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? He won't. No, no, he won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. No, he won't. He would never fail us. He never will. Come on, if you have a testimony to sing today, listen. Came when blew, my house was built on you. Yeah. I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it. Let's believe that. Rain came, wind blew, my house was built on you. I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it. Sing again. Rain came, wind blew, my house was built on you. Oh, I'm safe with you, Jesus. I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it. Sing, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it through. Oh, I'm standing strong. Sing, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it through. Oh, 'cause my house was built. Christ is. See, Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaken. I've never been more glad. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus. He's never let me down. He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. No, he won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. No, he won't. God, thank you so much. God, for those of us coming into a space like this, God, needing you to come through again, God. God, would you help us believe, Lord, that you've done it before and you will do it again, Lord. God, I pray for every spoken and unspoken prayer, God, in this place, needing the God of miracles this morning. We pray this in Jesus' name. And the church says, amen. You guys can have a seat.
What What's God like?
What a question.
Well, he's a spirit.
He's a man.
The white beard sitting on a cloud.
He's got a plan of some sort.
At least I think he does.
What is this thing?
Very good question.
Infinite and powerful.
Full of love.
And so very wise.
Existing within and beyond the material plane.
This God
Refuses to be.
Put in your box.
What do we do with it?
Let's find out.
Honey badgers don't care. They fearlessly confront larger predators. They have thick, loose and elastic skin that serves as a protective barrier against predators and snake bites. When threatened, they can inflate their bodies, making it harder for predators to grip them. They can withstand almost all snake venom. They take the bite, kill the snake, pass out, wake up, eat the snake, and continue with their life. Their strong jaws can crush bones and tough hides. They are skilled diggers, using sharp claws for hunting, and they also dig for water in arid regions. They exhibit problem-solving abilities and complex behaviors. Even his cocky walking, he knows, is him. There's one more thing. Honey badgers have a reversible anal pouch. When threatened, they push this pouch out of their anus, and the smell is so bad that it scares away most predators.
Boy, you didn't expect that, did you? Good morning. Welcome to Verve City Church. My name is Josh Crane. I'm the lead pastor here. And if this is your first Sunday, aren't you glad you're here? So we're doing a new series starting today called What God is Like. What God is Like. And the name of today's message is God is Like a Honey Badger. I will explain it to you later on in this message. We've got some other stuff to get to first, but we will get to the reason that God is like a honey badger. First, we're going to talk about ISIS, and then we're going to talk about peaceniks, and then we're going to talk about my mother-in-law, and that has no relation to the ISIS thing, I promise, okay? And then we're going to talk about Greek gods, and then Moses, and then animals in clothing, and then jealous brothers, and then we'll be done. Sound good? Okay, that's the roadmap for today. What is God like? God is like a honey badger. This quote by A.W. Tozer I find to be very helpful. He's a theologian from a long time ago, and he says this: what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. What comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. Agree or disagree? It's one of the reasons we've decided to do this series. I want to talk to you for the next several weeks about what God is like. And I want to talk to you specifically about it from the Jesus tradition or the Christian tradition. So this series, if you're kind of a skeptic and agnostic, you're not sure what you think about faith or about Jesus or about Christianity, I'm not trying to prove God's existence or prove that this stuff is accurate to you over the next several weeks. What I want to do, though, is explore this question, what is God like, from the Jesus perspective, from the Christian perspective. And, of course, also from the Jewish perspective, because Jesus was a Jew. So the Old Testament in your English Bible is the Hebrew Bible, and that would have been the scriptures that Jesus was intimately familiar with and built off of. And in the New Testament, the scriptures all about Jesus, what he did in the early church. So we want to look at those two things, the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament, and we want to look and see what they say God is like. And the reason I think this is incredibly important is simply because what you believe about God will shape who you become. I strongly believe this, that what you believe about God will shape who you become, because we become like what we worship. We become like what we worship. So if you're a follower of Jesus, if you worship Jesus, if you worship God, then what you believe about him is incredibly important because we become like what we worship. But maybe you're not a Christian. Maybe you're not a follower of Christ. Maybe you're not sure what you think about the whole faith thing. You follow something. You worship something because we're just kind of like, I believe, built to be worshipers. And some of us, it's money, and some of it's success, and some of us, it's power, and some of it's material goods. Some of it's fame, or at least the appearance of success, but we become like what we worship. And if you look at different religious sects around the world, different parts of other religious traditions, or even of Christianity, you will see this play out over and over and over again. For instance, ISIS, over the last decade or so, has been known for terrorism in the name of Allah, right? It is a radical branch of the Islamic tradition that has a very radical view of Allah, the God that they worship. And so because of that, they are radical themselves, and they've killed other people. And they believe they are doing that, not just that it's permissible within their understanding of God, but that it's desirable, that their understanding of Allah wants them to do these horrible things. That's the way they view God, and that's the way that they live their lives, because we become like what we worship. Or perhaps you've seen people who are pacifists in the way of Jesus. They believe that Jesus' teaching on enemy love, on loving those who would persecute you, needs to be driven down into their own life and including into many of the wars that maybe are happening all around the world. And so you've seen followers of Jesus who are protesting at different protests about war. Or perhaps Westboro Baptist Church, not affiliated, by the way, with any actual Baptist denomination. They're an independent church. But Westboro Baptist Church has a very particular view of God. And it leads them, because of this view, to go out into the world with these kind of hateful signs. They've protested at the funerals of soldiers and of gay people. And they carry signs around like, you're going to hell, or not blessed, just cursed, or God hates you, or God is your enemy. This is the way that they see God. And so this is the way that they live their lives. Or perhaps Mother Teresa, right? Or a number of nuns all around the world who have devoted their life to the service and the compassion and care of others because they believe that that's what God is like, and so that's who they want to become. We become like what we worship. Over and over again, this is true. So I think it's an incredibly important topic because I believe you become like what you worship. And if we want to know what God is like, we got to understand that when we do that, the more we find out, the more that it will probably cause us to redirect our life or reorient our priorities to try and become more and more like what he is like. So we're going to camp out over the next several weeks in a passage in Exodus chapter 34, and then we're going to build on it by looking at some other passages throughout both the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament. And that's what we're going to do. And I'm excited about it. What is God like? The place I want to start is that a lot of times to answer this question, people use words that aren't necessarily that descriptive or that helpful in the grand scheme of things. When we ask the question, what is God like? A lot of times people start talking about the omnis, that God is omnipotent, he's omniscient, he's omnipresent, he's omnibenevolent. What they mean is that, right, he's all-powerful, he's all-knowing, he's everywhere, he's everything everywhere all at once. It'd be a great title for a movie, maybe. He's omnibenevolent, he's always looking out for others because of his compassion. So we hear these kind of omni words, and they're typically like in the realm of philosophy or theology, these omni words. But these aren't very helpful, I don't think. Really getting at the personality of God, what God is like at the core of who he is. These are very 30,000-foot level, but they don't tell us much about him. For instance, if you were to ask me about my mother-in-law, I could tell you that, well, she's in her late 60s. She's 5 foot 4 inches tall. She's retired and she has blonde hair. Do you feel like you know her really well? Yeah? No, these are just like statistics almost that you see on the back of a basketball card. Like this is very little information about what my mother-in-law is actually like. So I'd like to tell you for just a couple minutes what my mother-in-law is like, because I've been waiting to do this for years. And so I'm excited to, Debbie, I hope you're watching. I'm very excited to have you tune in. No, here's the crazy thing. I both love and enjoy my mother-in-law. And I've talked to lots of men over the course of the years who can only say one or none of those things about their mother-in-law. So I am very grateful to both love and enjoy my mother-in-law. So her name is Debbie. My wife's name is Emily. And so this is her. We actually went to the opera a few months ago. I still have to tell you that story sometime, by the way. It did not end well. Here's my son, Jack, and she's very supportive there in the background because that's just who she is. She is a wonderful, whimsical person who is incredibly kind and gracious to people. That's who she is. But I love, one of the first stories I heard about her when I married into the family was when she was in high school. They were doing a science experiment, and they were mixing some different ingredients together to cause a very small, like little thing, almost like an explosion, more like a puff of smoke, I guess. I don't know what the ingredients were. And she thought it was great, so great, in fact, that she took a whole bunch of these ingredients into the women's bathroom and poured them all into a toilet and blew the toilet up. Like it exploded, and she got suspended. And I was like, I like this lady. This is really good. Just anyone who would do that, like, you're okay in my book. And then I found out later that while she's incredibly generous, I mean, her and my father-in-law have given away, I'm sure, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years to charitable organizations, to churches, to people in need, to family members in need. I mean, they're just incredibly generous people. But she's also fairly straightforward and really, really loves to drive. Like if she's in the car, she wants to be the one driving, which is why Emily and I enjoy making her sit in the passenger seat when she comes and visits, because she just kind of gets redder and redder and starts to sweat a little bit when she's not in control, and that's just fun to watch. So a few years ago, this is when Emily and I first got married, probably married 2 or 3 years. Debbie came to visit us. I forget, we're living in town, I think in Chicago, and Emily was driving. Debbie was sitting in the passenger seat. I was in the back seat. And my wife was following the car in front of her too closely. She seems really sweet if you meet her when she's on stage here leading worship, but she's an aggressive driver. And so the car in front of her came to a pretty sudden stop, so she had to come to an extra sudden stop because she was following too closely. And Debbie goes, Emily, you always do that. You follow people too closely. And I'm in the backseat like, yeah, you do that. That's hilarious. Like, and then Debbie looked at me and she said, would you like to know what you do wrong when you drive? Or would you like for it to remain a mystery? And I said, lay it on me. And she did. So I really always enjoy her. So she's whimsical, she's generous, she's kind, she's gracious, she's funny, she's straightforward. Now you have a better idea of what my mother-in-law is like, because I haven't just told you that she's retired and blonde and in late 60s and 5'4". Like, there are certain things about God that are really helpful to know. There are certain things that are like statistics. Like, these is kind of like what he's like at some level, but it's not who he is in his essence. And so what we see in the scripture is this, like over and over again, is God trying to reveal himself slowly to his people. So he reveals himself to Israel, but it's something that theologians call progressive revelation. He doesn't reveal all of who he is all at once. Keep in mind, when he's revealing himself thousands of years ago, he's revealing himself into a society that is incredibly violent. It's a society that has very big ideas about what the gods are like. It was a polytheistic society, so multiple gods. And it was a society that thought of the divine in a very different way than it actually was. And so you really can't go in there and just change all of their ideas all at once. And so what we see is a slow revealing of who he is all throughout the Hebrew Bible and into the New Testament, which finally culminates, by the way, in Jesus taking on flesh and blood and revealing the very character of God by the way that he lived amongst human beings. Like that's where all this is headed. That's where it's going. So the question for this series is, who do the Christian scriptures say God is? And the first place I want to start in 2025, in a Western, very pluralistic society, right? Increasingly, lots of religious traditions are coexisting fairly peacefully here in the U.S. And so I think it's helpful for us to name like who the Christian scriptures say that God is. And here's the first thing I want to say. God is a person. God is a person. And by that, what I mean is that God is a relational being. Like the scriptures depict God as existing as one God, but as a community of persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, which means God has been relational for all eternity. God is always relational. Even before humans are created for him to have relationship with, God is interrelational with God's self. And so like how that works exactly is quite mysterious to the church. But mystery doesn't mean unknowable. Just because something is a mystery doesn't mean we can't know it at all. Mystery means it's too large for us to possibly comprehend all of it. And so mystery actually means that it is endlessly knowable. So you start to explore who God is, and it's not just like, oh, who can say? Like, no, there's a lot we can say. We just can't fully understand it because it's too large for us to comprehend. You're always just like, oh, another level, another level, another level. God is a relational being in and of himself, but he is chosen to become relational with us, which means, and this is, I think, important for our context, God is not an impersonal force. By the way, I could have chosen a better shirt today, right? It looks like I'm camouflaged up here. So, but God is not an impersonal force. A lot of times when people talk about the divine or about spiritual things these days is that there's just a force within the universe, or there's a collectiveness that we all share in, and that's God, and you're God, and I'm God. That is not the teaching in the Jesus tradition. In the Jesus tradition, God is not an impersonal force. He is a relational being, a personal God. That's why oftentimes you'll hear Christians say something about having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. We believe that that's what God is inviting us into, an actual relationship with him. Now, what's interesting is that the Hebrew Bible has a vastly different understanding of God than its contemporaries, okay? There were lots of understandings of the gods, polytheistic society, multiple gods, at the time that the Hebrew Bible is being written down. And when Moses, who we'll get to in just a moment, one of the ancient Hebrew heroes in the Hebrew Bible, is having a major interaction with God that we're going to look at in a moment. Around that same time, there are other stories being written down about the way that the gods are all over the ancient Near East. And so we read, for instance, a story about, if you've ever read about the Trojan Wars, you know that there are gods heavily involved in all of the Trojan Wars. So this is the way that people thought about how the divine interacted. And what you'll see is that over and over again, the gods are capricious. The gods are angry. The gods have mood swings. They're mad all the time about something. And then humans are always trying to get the gods to be on their side. And so if the crop doesn't come in that year, well, the gods must not have sent rain. We've got to do something to get the gods on our side. If we didn't have success in business this year, the gods must be angry. We've got to do something to get the gods on our side. So they're constantly trying to placate the gods and all of these other traditions. And so we read this story about Agamemnon, who's the king of Greece. He and his army are crossing the Mediterranean Sea to participate in the Battle of Troy, and suddenly all the wind stops. Their sails go completely limp, and they're dead in the water. They can't even get across. And come to find out, Artemis is angry at Agamemnon. Artemis was one of the Greek goddesses. And Artemis, kind of her key defining attribute is that she's pretty much angry about something all the time. And so they got to figure out a way to try to satisfy Artemis. And so what they do is that they try and go to, she requests that they sacrifice Iphigenia, who is Agamemnon's daughter. So Iphigenia gets brought before kind of everybody, and there's wailing and gnashing of teeth, and like this is going to be terrible. But they choose to slit her throat to appease Artemis, and as soon as she is killed, the sails fill with wind and they start to go. And this is often the way that the gods are depicted. They're angry, and eventually they're going to require you to sacrifice that which you love most in order to appease them. I give you that background because I want you to understand how the ancient world thought about the divine when we walk into this story we're about to walk into. Because the contrast between the way the rest of the world was thinking about it and the way that these ancient Hebrew people experienced God cannot possibly be overstated. So to set the story up, we're going to be in the book of Exodus in chapter 34. And this is a chapter we're going to look at over the next several weeks. But to set it up, this story is about Moses. And if you're not super familiar with Moses, just a little bit about him. Moses was an Israelite. He was born to a bunch of Israelites who were in the kingdom of Egypt. And then he was adopted into Pharaoh, the king of Egypt's household, as an Egyptian, essentially. But his people, the Israelites, were in bondage and in slavery to Egypt, forced to make bricks and mortar constantly. And they were at major risk of being overrun and possibly wiped out by Pharaoh. Now, at some point, after, it's a long story, but Moses ends up leaving Egypt and going off by himself. God appears to him in a burning bush and tells him that he has compassion for these Israelites, Moses' fellow Israelites, who are still in bondage in Egypt. He sends Moses back to go to the court of Pharaoh and to request that they can go and worship their God out in the desert, out in the wilderness for several days. And Pharaoh does not agree to this. In fact, the more that Moses asks, the more that Pharaoh hardens his own heart to this request. And eventually hardens his heart so much, he passes the point of no return. And so God just doubles down, hardens it even harder. It's like, look, Pharaoh, I wanted to use you to show my compassion and my power. And I was going to be able to do that by you relenting to my request. But if you won't relent to that request, I can use your hardness of heart as well to show my compassion and my power. And so I'll just make it even harder. And so Pharaoh ends up letting all the Israelites go after a series of plagues sweeps over the land. And then Israel ends up escaping through the waters of the Red Sea that God miraculously parts by using Moses so that the Israelites can cross over and Pharaoh's army is wiped out. So that's the basic story here. And if you watch a movie about Moses, whether it's Charlton Heston or it's Prince of Egypt cartoon, this is kind of where it ends. The movie, they cross the Red Sea, and it's like, woohoo, everything was great after that, and they lived happily ever after. The end, credits, right? That's how it typically goes. But that's not at all where the story ends. In fact, not long after God parted the Red Sea, and they're celebrating, they're singing songs of adoration to God, Israel gets out into the wilderness, and they start hating their lives. They start longing for Egypt again because at least there, they knew what kind of food they were going to get and they knew where they were going to sleep. And so very quickly, they turn against Moses and they turn against God, and it's very frustrating. And so Moses is dealing with all of these stiff-necked people, and if you work, at a company on a team, you get it. So he's dealing with all these stiff-necked people, and he can't quite get them on the same page, and he goes up to convene with God, and finally, in Exodus 33, he kind of has a desperation where it's like, God, I just want to know you. Like, I don't know that I can handle all this. Like, I need to understand more of who you are if I'm going to lead these people. I just want to be in your presence. God, I want to see your face. And God tells him that because God is infinite and Moses is finite, Moses can't handle being in the presence of God. It's like it will kill you. That's what will happen. But in Exodus 34, he says, I'll walk before you, and you won't be able to see my face. You won't be able to see all of me, but I'll show you what I can show you, is essentially what he tells him. And that's all you can handle, but that will be transformative for you. So in Exodus 34, we see this happen. He makes the promise in 33, then in 34. The Lord came down in a cloud, and he stood there with Moses, and he called out his own name, Yahweh, right? God has a name. It's not just God. They didn't just call him God. When they wrote it down, it was Yahweh. It was often translated the Lord, but Yahweh is what God wants to be known as. The Lord passed in front of Moses. And then this is what he calls out. So as he passes in front of Moses, he's going to tell him who he is, right? You have my name, Yahweh, and here's the essence. Here's the core of who I am. If you want to know what I'm like, here's what I'm like. Verse 6. Yahweh the Lord, the God of compassion and mercy. I am slow to anger and filled with unfailing love and faithfulness. I lavish unfailing love to 1,000 generations. I forgive iniquity, rebellion, and sin. Now look, if you've been in church a long time, or if you grew up in church, you may not only be familiar with this passage, but it may seem fairly unexceptional to you. Like, oh yeah, that's who God is. Compassion, mercy, love. Like, yeah, sure, that's who God is. I can't overstate enough how wildly different these attributes were compared to the way the rest of the ancient Near East is thinking about the divine at this time. When you think of the other gods as being angry and capricious and prone to mood swings, and we're always trying to appease them, this God says, I am full of compassion and mercy. You want to know what I'm like? I am the passionate and merciful one. I'm the compassionate and the merciful one. I am slow to anger. Those other gods, they get mad at the drop of a hat. Not me. I do get angry. By the way, you want a God who gets angry about some things. There are injustices in the world, wrongs in the world, harms in the world, that if someone is any righteousness at all, they'll be like, that's not okay. I am furious about that. And so this God will get angry, but he says, I'm not like the other gods. I don't get angry at the drop of a hat. I don't take personal slights and fly off the handle. I am slow to anger. There are some things worth getting angry about, but I am slow to come to that anger. Because at the core of who I am is compassion and mercy and unfailing love and faithfulness. Compassion is an emotion word. And the way that compassion, like the Hebrew word behind this word, is used in most of the Hebrew Bible is that it's used to talk about the compassion that a parent has for their child. My wife and I had a child in 2013. His name is Jack. And then we decided to have another child about 3 years later. And so Emily got pregnant, and it wasn't a helpful pregnancy. Like, it seemed like this child was doing everything to kill her he possibly could. In the womb, she was sick all the time. Some people get pregnant. My wife was infected with a baby, and so she's like trying to work her way through that, right? And then a few months into the pregnancy, we find out that there is a lot of fluid in this child's belly, and they don't think he's going to make it. Like a 70% chance of dying is what we're told by the doctors. And so there's not a lot they can do. They start talking about maybe these like kind of microsurgeries they could possibly do, but they were really high risk. And then we go back at one point, we've got all these people praying for him, and they say that there is a spontaneous evacuation event that they can't quite explain, where it just was gone. It was just gone. And for a while then when he was born, his belly was kind of bloated. And now he's 9 years old and he has a six-pack that, let me add, he has not worked for. He just has one. That really doesn't feel fair, I gotta tell you. So, but man, I felt so much compassion for that child even before he was born. And as after the evacuation event, it looked like he was going to be born and it was going to be healthy, and we were very excited about that. And you know, we're 8.5 months in, and Emily is not feeling very good, and her mom and my mom come up to visit us. We were living in Pennsylvania at the time, and she just wants this baby to be born. Like, whatever it takes for this baby to be born, I want to do that. And then one day she tells me she's pretty sure she's going into labor. She'd kind of said that before. I wasn't sure if this was real, right? So I'm like, well, why don't you go to the hospital with your mom? It's just right down the road from us, and I'll stay here with my mom and Jack, our oldest. And if they think you're going into labor, then I can pop right over, and that way we can kind of divide and conquer, right, with the kiddos here. And so she didn't love that because she was certain she was going into it. But her mom and me were kind of like, I don't know, we'll see, right? And so they go to the hospital, and they tell her, like, no, you're barely dilated. Like, you don't really look like you're probably gonna go right now. And so she's like, no, this is happening. She starts walking as much as she can. She goes down the road from the hospital to eat at a Mexican food restaurant. I don't even know how many spicy foods she ate, but she just kept eating. And then came back with her mom, and they're like, well, a little bit more, but still probably not. And she's like, no, this is coming. And so she just kept walking around the hospital. She's calling me meantime, like, maybe you should come up here. I'm like, but they're saying it's not coming. She's like, it's coming. And I'm like, but they're professionals, and they have like equipment and stuff. I don't know. Like, it seems like, so we kind of got into a little bit of a spat over it. And finally, she called me up and she's like, hey, they've got me in a room. He's definitely coming tonight. And I'm like, okay, you willed this baby to be born. That's kind of annoying, but I'll come up right now. So we had a friend of ours take care of our oldest son. My mom and I went up, and so I'm there. We're in the delivery room. My mom and her mom are in the delivery room. Can I just say, as a guy, that is awkward. Not my favorite thing for us all to be just staring at what we're staring at, right? So, but we're all there. But there's a little bit of tension in the room because she wanted me to come earlier and I didn't, and and then I'm like, well, this feels weird, and so there's all of that, and then this child is born, and it's like all of the compassion I felt toward this child, who for months we thought might not make it, all of it came roaring into the room all at once, and suddenly there was no room for any of that other stuff. There was no room for the spat. There was no room for the awkwardness of my mother-in-law and my mom being there. Like, it was just pure compassion for this baby who was here now and who started crying, and immediately what I wanted was just fix it, right? Whatever is broken, can we fix it? Can we help comfort him? Can we calm him down? And I don't know that I'm the most compassionate person in the world, but I do know that my children have taught me something about compassion over the years, that if they're suffering, if they're in pain, even if they mess up, I have compassion because I don't want that for them. It's not just like, oh, I'm upset that you messed my day up. It's like, oh, I don't want you to feel that way. I don't want you to act that way, and maybe dissociate yourself from other people. Like, I want better for you than that. This is the kind of compassion. When the word compassion is used in the Hebrew Bible, it's that kind of like parental, like a good father or a good mother, that kind of compassion. And this God who is announcing to Moses who he is, and in Moses' mind, the way he's thought of gods over the decades he's been alive has probably been a lot the way they thought of them in Egypt, which is the gods are capricious, and the gods have mood swings, and the gods are angry. And this God says, I am a God of compassion. The way that a good mother or a good father thinks about you, that's how I feel toward you. That's what my heart is toward you. I'm a God of compassion. So compassion is an emotion word, and then mercy is an action word. Not only do I feel compassion toward you, but I take steps to pour out my mercy on you. I give you more than you deserve because of my compassion. I'm with you. I will offer grace and mercy because of my compassion. And this is just such a this is a tectonic shift in human consciousness when Yahweh reveals himself as that kind of God. Because that is not the way the gods were. And he's like, I'm the one creator God, the Lord of compassion and mercy. He says, I am slow to anger, right? And I am filled with unfailing love and faithfulness. And I lavish that unfailing love to 1,000 generations. Other people hold grudges. Other people make you sacrifice in order to be forgiven. But look, I forgive iniquity, rebellion, and sin. It's not just like, I'll do it, I guess. I'll relent. And I forgive it. I take it away. I wipe it out. I don't hold it against you. I forgive. I don't hold grudges. The gods weren't like this. But this God, the God, says that's exactly who I am. And then he goes on, and this next passage goes with this. So we got to put it all together, but we're not going to have time to get to this one today. So I'm going to unpack this in a couple of weeks. So come back for that, but I just want to quickly hit it today. He says, but I do not excuse the guilty. I lay the sins of the parents upon their children and grandchildren. The entire family is affected, even children in the third and fourth generations. This passage, this part of it, is about justice and about righteous anger, and we actually want that from God, but it can sound kind of backwards in the way that it's written here if we don't understand all that's behind it, so we'll have to get to this in a couple of weeks. For today, I want to really focus on the compassion and mercy part, because it is the foundational piece, and this stuff comes after that, and it's important, and we will get to it, but just not today. And the important thing, too, is he doesn't just say this. The Bible is full of stories over and over that show it. Let's show it. So I want to give you one found in your Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, and one found in the New Testament that Jesus tells, in order for us to understand what God is like around his love and his compassion and his mercy and his slowness to anger. The first one is the story of Jonah. Jonah was a prophet, and he was a prophet of Israel. And some people believe this story literally happened. Some people believe some wise people wrote it down as an allegorical story, almost like a parable like Jesus used to tell. But regardless of whether it was historical or not, the story says a lot about the heart of God. And so Jonah is a prophet in ancient Israel, and Jonah is tasked by God to go to his greatest enemies, the Assyrians, in their capital city of Nineveh, and tell them to repent, and that if they don't repent, God is going to destroy the city of Nineveh in 40 days. And Jonah hates these people so much that he decides he does not want to go. It's not that he's afraid of them. It's not that he's afraid of the Ninevites. He just doesn't want to do anything that might possibly help the Ninevites. So he runs in the literal opposite direction, days away from them, in the opposite direction, so that he won't have to go and do what God is doing. He's not running from Nineveh, he's running from God. And so in the story, there's this giant fish that comes up out of the ocean that swallows him, and he sits in the fish for 3 days, and he thinks, like, maybe I should go. And then the fish gets heartburn and pukes him up on the sea. And a lot of times we get hung up on the fish and what the fish was and whether the fish was literal and all this kind of stuff. Like, that is not the point of the story. The fish is just a device to get Jonah to do what Jonah was asked to do. So we're going to set the fish aside. We talked about it. You're welcome. We're going to move forward now, okay? Because then he goes to Nineveh, and he proclaims, he goes and teaches and preaches to the king and to the people 40 days, and God is going to destroy this place. I mean, it wasn't exactly a real helpful bullet point list of all the reasons to follow Yahweh. Like, he just basically 40 days, you're all dead. I'll be here all week. And just walks away. That's it. That's kind of the message. And then he goes up on a hillside, and God grows a plant out to give him shade. So he sits on the hillside, and I imagine folds his arms and stares at the city. And the only thing he's enjoying now about this whole task is that maybe at least he'll have a front row to see this place get blown to bits. So he's just sitting there. And then the unthinkable happens. The Spirit of God seems to have moved in the place. Because the Assyrian king in Nineveh repents. He says to the God of Israel, their biggest enemies, I'm sorry for the injustice we've inflicted. By the way, we found some Ninevite writings a few decades ago, and I had little fragments of them that I was going to put up here this morning, and I decided they were too violent for Sunday morning, because we might have kids here. They were bad. These guys treated people horribly. You think slit throats are bad. It was way, way worse than that, what they would do to their enemies. These are bad people. But the king repents, and he has the people repent. And so they cover themselves with dust and ashes to show how sorry they are. And then they take off their normal clothes, and they put on sackcloth, which is this kind of rough bag sack material that they would have carried around food or flour in. That's what they all wear. It was kind of an outward sign of an inward reality. We are so sorry that we're going to cover ourselves with dust and ashes and sackcloth. That's how sorry we are. We are apologizing for the way that we've been. Please have mercy on us. Please show compassion toward us. In fact, they take it so far, they make sackcloth outfits for all of their animals, right? You ever been to an airport and you've seen a chihuahua and a little sweater and you're like, that's a lot, right? They decide to make outfits for all their, cows and sheep and goats. They put sackcloth on all of them. We're sorry. If our animals offended you, they're sorry. We're all really sorry. So God doesn't destroy them. And the end of the story, if you're thinking Jonah's a prophet of God. Jonah was sent on an important mission to go tell the enemies of God that they should repent, and they did. That's like you being sent on an impossible mission, and you accomplish it. People think there's no way that'll ever happen, but it does. So he's thrilled, right? No. He's super big mad. And so we read this in Jonah chapter 4, verse 1. This change of plans that God would not destroy them. It greatly upset Jonah, and he became very angry. So he complained to the Lord about it. Didn't I say before I left home that you would do this? That you would do this, Lord? That's why I ran to Tarshish. I went in the opposite direction. I knew you would do this. Why? Watch his response here. I knew that you are a merciful and compassionate God, slow to get angry and filled with unfailing love. You'd think that's a good thing. He is quoting Exodus 34 to God. He's quoting the passage that revealed that the creator of all is not capricious, is not prone to mood swings, doesn't require your child to be sacrificed. He is a good and benevolent God, and Jonah is furious about that because it might mean something good for his enemies. Boy, I wish we were different. The truth is, when we decide that someone is our enemy, sometimes we long for something so badly to happen to them that's bad. That we'd be happy to be afflicted ourselves as long as they get punished even worse. Oh, I can take a little pain as long as they get a lot of pain. And a lot of times when we pick a friend group or a politician or a savior, we really hope that they'll hate the same people we hate. We don't ever say it that way. But that's what we admire, that's what we hope for the most. And what Jonah is so furious about is that this is a merciful and compassionate God who is slow to anger and filled with unfailing love. And he says, you are eager to turn back from destroying people. Just kill me now, Lord. Kill me. I'd rather be dead than to be alive and see them be alive. Woo. I'd rather be dead than alive if what I predicted will not happen. This story ends, by the way, with God making the plant wither above Jonah so that he doesn't have the shade anymore. And Jonah is extra furious about that. And so God says, hey, you know that plant that I had grow up and you really like that, right? Jonah was like, yeah. He's like, and then I took it away. And Jonah was like, yeah, I hated that too. He said, yeah, those people out there, Jonah, that you're watching right now, hoping that they'll get burned to a crisp, I made them. I love them, even though they're your sworn enemy. There's hundreds of thousands of them and many more animals. How much more should I long for their health than you long for the health of this stupid plant? And that's the end of the story. We have no idea what Jonah said next. I'm guessing it wasn't, that's a great point, God, super sorry about that. That doesn't seem to be the space he was in, okay? But the question is for Jonah, but really the question is for everyone who reads it and longs to follow after a God who is compassionate and merciful, who is slow to anger and filled with unfailing love. Because if you want to follow after that kind of God, if you want to orient your life around that kind of way, you're going to have to get used to being upset when God blesses your enemies. Because he's not just merciful and compassionate to you. He loves every single person on this planet in a completely unlimited, infinite kind of way. And we struggle with that. Mercy for us, that's great. Compassion for us and our friends, all of that, that's really good. But for our enemies? Jesus tells a famous story in Luke. And it's the story of the prodigal son. And it's probably his most famous story, so many of you will be familiar with it, even if you're not a church person. He tells a story about a younger son. He's got an older brother. And the younger son goes to his father and he tells him, I would like my inheritance now, please, which is a first century Jewish way of saying, I wish you were dead, and I'd really just like to have your stuff. And so his father gives him his inheritance, and he goes off and he squanders it. And I assume on Pokemon cards and scratch-off tickets, I don't know. But he goes off and he squanders it all. And it's on alcohol, it's on women, it's all that kind of stuff. And he ends up working in this pigsty, which if you've never worked with pigs, right? I grew up in East Texas, so I've worked with pigs a little bit. It is the stinkiest, grossest, you can't imagine how bad their slop smells. And as he's doing, he finds himself eating what the pigs are eating, which is absolutely disgusting. And for a Jew as well, totally unclean from a religious perspective. And so he thinks to himself, man, if I go home and apologize to my dad and he gets to do the told you so, if he gets to do that to me, but then makes me a servant of his household, literally just kind of makes me a slave the rest of my life to his whim, I'd be better off there than I would be out here eating the same slop that the pigs are eating. So he heads home and he's fully expecting his father to see him and to be angry with him and to say, I told you so, but that is not what happens. And in the telling of this with Jesus, it is obvious that the Father in this story is a picture of God because of his compassion and his mercy. What we see is that the Father apparently has been looking out at the horizon every day since the Son left, hoping for his return. And the father, when he sees the son, doesn't just wait for him, doesn't tut him, he runs to him, which in the first century was completely outrageous. Like, the father doesn't run, right? Like, if you're over 40 now, you shouldn't run, right? It's not that you can't, it's that you look bad doing it. And so there's kind of like, it's kind of the same back then, except even worse because they had robes, right, coming down to their ankles. That was how they were. And so to run, you had to lift the robes, which means you had to expose your ankle and your calf. This scandal. And so he would lift the robes and then run to the son. And this father is fine with looking completely undignified because he is overwhelmed with compassion and mercy for his son. And as his son is trying to apologize, he can barely get a word in without the father being like, bring the ring, bring the robe, get him a bath, please get him a bath. Bring the fatted cow, invite the entire town because we're gonna have a huge party. This is the grace and the compassion and the unfailing love, the slowness to anger of Yahweh. And Jesus is painting a picture of it. And how does his older brother respond to the father welcoming him home? Well, he kind of goes full Jonah on him. Luke 15:28, the older brother was angry and wouldn't go into the party, and his father came out and begged him, but he replied, all these years I've slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to do. And all that time you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends, yet when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. He's burning with jealousy. Like, I've been here the whole time. And what have you given me? This guy treats you the way he does. He comes back and you're like throwing a party for him. His father said to him, look, dear son, you have always stayed by me. Everything I have is yours. All of it. I can just imagine him saying, like, son, you see that hill over there with all the goats on it? Son's like, yeah. So how many goats do you think I have over there in that pasture? I don't know, Daddy, maybe 1,000 goats over there. I said, yeah, and that one over there? Oh, well, that's your biggest herd, Daddy. You got about 3,000 goats over there. Yeah, and this one over here, oh, you got about 700 goats over there. It's like, right, yeah. Everything I have is yours. You want a goat? Go get a goat. You've been with me the whole time, man. And everything I have is yours. And my welcoming your brother home does not diminish your standing, does not diminish what you have. He goes on to say this, we had to celebrate this happy day. For your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he's found. You will not fully appreciate who God is until you understand that he is so characterized by love and mercy and compassion that sometimes you will find it disturbing. You will not grasp the audacity of God's compassion and grace until you realize how madly in love he is with someone you despise. Last thing, and then I'll be done. A few years ago, a friend of mine, he pastors a church in St. Paul, Minnesota, and they had a number of artists come and put up murals at a mall there. And there was one particular painting especially that stood out, and it was Jesus washing the feet of world leaders all around the world. And this was in about 2003, 2004. And so Jesus is stooped before these world leaders who are sitting on chairs, and he's washing feet. And there to have their feet washed are George W. Bush and Angela Merkel, and Stephen Harper, who was the Canadian Prime Minister at the time, and also Osama bin Laden. And lots of Christians wrote in furious about this painting because they had a simple misunderstanding that Osama bin Laden hadn't done anything to earn the mercy and the compassion of Jesus, but that Jesus would just want to give it to him anyway. It's a gift that has to be chosen to be received, but like Jesus would offer it to him. And that similarly, George W. Bush and Angela Merkel, like they did nothing to earn the grace and mercy and compassion of Jesus, but he would just want to offer it to them anyway. And you will not grasp the audacity of God's compassion and grace until you realize how madly in love he is with someone you despise. What is this about God? Like, no matter how far away we run from him, no matter how bad our lives are, no matter how much we mess up, no matter how many mistakes we make, he keeps pursuing us and coming after us. There is nothing we can do that he will be deterred. There is nothing we can say that will make him flee from us. He just runs after us our entire lives. He will not give up on us because God is love, and God is like a honey badger. He just won't stop. And if that's the God you want to follow, then that's what your life will look like too. You'll just keep having mercy and compassion for people. And so as you reflect on that God, practice mercy and compassion. Who in your life do you need to forgive? Not because they've earned it, not because it means the relationship is going to necessarily be like it was before, but you need to let go of the vitriol and bitterness that you've been holding on to because it's not helpful to them and it's not helpful to you. And it's not helpful in your following after this God who is slow to anger and filled with love and compassion and mercy. Like, who do you need to forgive? Who do you need to bless? Sometimes the people we need to bless are the people who are closest to us. It's family members who sometimes we have the hardest time blessing because we're so close. Sometimes it's people who are most annoying to us. It's coworkers, it's classmates. It's people who we struggle with. And like, who do you need to show mercy and compassion to? Not because it necessarily comes naturally right at first, but because you serve a God who's just that kind of God and who is calling you to be just that kind of person. And then the other thing we need to do is we need to do what ancient Israel did, which is to respond to this mercy and compassion and this love in worship. Worship is when we sing together. And I know that there aren't like a lot of places in our culture where we naturally come together and we all sing, except at like Beyonce and Taylor Swift concerts. And so like it feels a little outside of our norm for us. And so it feels a little awkward when we're in a room gathered with a bunch of people. And yet historically, for the last several thousand years, the worship of God is what has connected the knowledge of our minds with the emotion of our heart. It connects what we know with what we feel. And there's something about worship that like we can't approach loving the way that God loves. We can't possibly show the kind of mercy and compassion that God shows. Like, we're just not able to do that. He is infinite. We are finite. We get better and better over the course of a lifetime, but we'll never fully match what he's capable of. We just can't possibly do it. And yet one thing we can do is return adoration for how good he is. And so I'm going to ask the band to come out this morning. Sometimes I pray and they sneak out here like Nosferatu. But this morning, I'm going to, thank you. 8:30 had no idea what I was talking about. I appreciate the 12 of you that understood that. I decided to go for it anyway. So they're going to come out. We're going to worship together. So some of you I know have places to be, and oftentimes you leave during the last song. I would ask you this morning just to consider hanging in here for a minute and worshiping with us just for about 3.5 minutes, just to return some of what we're going to do is we're going to sing a song together. We're going to declare that God is love because we're told over and over and over in 1 John, we're told that at his very essence he is love, that God is merciful and compassionate, that the cross shows us who he is. So I invite you to stand together with us and just sing for the next couple minutes with us, and then our team will dismiss you after that. And I just want to invite you to be thinking of the beautiful picture of God revealing himself to Moses and revealing himself to us through Jesus as you worship together this morning. Would you sing with us?
There's nothing left to fear. Once and for all he showed how far deeper than we know. Oh, our God is love. His arms are open for all together. Here the cross has spoken. There's nothing left to fear. Once and for all He showed how far His grace will go for us. Our God is love, overcoming every grave, overwhelming all our shame. It's overflowing, it's overflowing. Our God is love, overcoming every grave, overwhelming all our shame. It's overflowing, it's overflowing. Our God is love, overcoming every grave, overwhelming all our shame. It's overflowing, it's overflowing. Our God is love, overcoming every grave, overwhelming all our shame. It's overflowing, it's overflowing. Our God is love. His arms are open for all together. Here the cross has spoken. There's nothing left to fear. Once and for all He showed how far His grace would go for us. Our God is love, overcoming every grave, overwhelming all our shame. It's overflowing, it's overflowing. Our God is love, overcoming every grave, overwhelming all our shame. It's overflowing, it's overflowing. Our God is love. It's overflowing, it's overflowing. Our God is love. It's overflowing, it's overflowing. Our God is love.
Verve City Church, our shepherding elders are going to be in the back. Don't be shy. They'd love to pray with you if you have something to talk to them or pray with them about. Guys, have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Pressing on with my back to the past, and oh price of